Good morning, Silvia. It's day 10 of our adventure. We're in Pendleton, Oregon. Tonight we'll be in Biggs Junction, Oregon. And then tomorrow will be our last day on the Oregon Trail. We'll make it to Oregon City, Oregon. It's about 54 degrees, 9:30 local time, getting a little bit of a late start. It's drizzling just a little bit, but I think it's going to be minor and pass on through. So let's get on the road. Here's another Oregon Trail kiosk in downtown Pendleton, Oregon. And some of the information is pretty neat. I won't tell you about every panel in here, but there's one kind of interesting. That's not it though. The long walk to Oregon. Contrary to popular belief, Oregon Trail immigrants rarely took the reins while seated in their covered wagons. Wagons were reserved for foodstuffs, household items, and to transport the sick and injured. The wagons were designed for farm use, not for comfort. Most overlanders walked from Missouri to the Willamette Valley, prodding and guiding their beleaguered teams with sticks. And here's another neat one, the Changing Trail. The railroad was completed cross-country in 1869, going through Utah, Nevada, California. So that kind of ended the trail going to California, but that was just a single line. The railroad did not get up into the Oregon area until 1883. So the trail was used going to Oregon until 1883. Here it talks about in 1852, 10,000 people left St. Joseph, Missouri, traveling sometimes 12 abreast. And it talks about the earlier travelers in the season got the best campsites and the grass and wood for cooking fires, and the later people got the leftovers. But you couldn't leave too early or there'd be no grass on the plains to feed your stock. If you left too late, you get caught in the pass in the snow. There were a lot of things to consider. Very windy day today. I don't know if you see it, there's dust in the wind over there. I had big plans to get my drone out here, fly over the Oregon Trail, over the ruts and swells, but it's too windy to even put my hat on. Oh well. Okay, here's what I'm looking for. Oregon Trail wagon ruts. Hiking through history. Okay, I thought it was closed to everything, but it's closed to motor vehicles, etc. But I can walk it. All right. Not only is it windy, it is cold. But hey, I've got a paved trail. 1/2 mile. Okay, this place is Echo Meadows. It was a primary route for the Oregon Trail from 1847 to 1860. No one camped here because it was only 4 miles from the river crossing, and that would be too early in the day to stop and camp. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? That was a long 1/2 mile. Wow. Now that's a swell. Very easy to see that one. The Oregon Trail. Right through there. Very nice. BLM, the Oregon Trail. I am walking in the Oregon Trail right now at Echo Meadows in eastern Oregon. So I'm walking the Oregon Trail backwards. A moment ago I saw someone up on that little point, and there appears to be a marker and there's a slight trail, so we need to check it out. I see a marker. It's hard to read for the bird poop. Oh, what a view! What a view! I just passed an onion warehouse, so I really don't know. Could those be onions? I can't see well enough to figure out what they are. But if there's an onion warehouse right here, seem to indicate those might be onions. I really don't know. I'm making that up. So I'm at the Willow Creek Campground, and this was an important site on the trail because there was water and forage for the pioneers and their livestock. It was often used as a layover for rest and equipment repair before pushing on to the Dales and a decision about whether to raft down the Columbia River or take the Barlow Road around the south side of Mount Hood to the Willamette Valley. Rafting down the Columbia River. Wow. And it says the trail continues westward up the side canyon over there somewhere, and it's marked. Now, I don't know if they mean straight up, like the little draw, or if they went around and up. I don't know. Now, I have read that the wagons were very top heavy, so they would never go around a hill if it was leaning in some direction because of the wagons being top heavy. So that's why often they just went straight up the hill. And I wonder how strong the wooden spoked wheels were with a wagon on its leaning one way or the other. I can't imagine that they could handle a lot of side stress, but I don't know. But apparently this was a very good place to stop. Lots of grass, lots of firewood, and they would often let the cattle eat. Like this guy right here says, we stayed in camp this morning until 10 o'clock and let the cattle rest and take their fill of the fine grass up the bottom. There's some Indian lodges just above camp. When they left camp, saw 2 dead horses and 1 ox. Saw 18 graves yesterday in Willow Creek bottom, in the bottom. They know who 3 of the 18 graves are. Elizabeth Toney died September 9, 1852 in childbirth. September, so that's getting up in the fall. Come all across the country, pregnant the whole time, and died in childbirth. Mary Moore, age 34, died September 12, 1852 of mountain fever. And Katie Rice died September 13, 1852 of mountain fever. So someone died September 9, September 12, September 13. And we know who those people are. The wind has been howling today, and I'm cold. The temperature is about 55, which doesn't sound that bad, but when it's blowing 30 to 40 miles an hour, it's cold, so I had to get my heated gear out again. The clouds have been threatening me all day, but other than a little drizzle when I left, I've avoided rain. I'm in Arlington, Oregon, in a valley which protects me from the wind, which has been killing me all day. And there's another kiosk with some interesting information as usual. So this map might help a little bit. This is the Columbia River. This is I-84 coming down the river. The Oregon Trail came across this way until you got right here. And then once you reached this river, they had a choice. They could go this way and go toward the Cascades of Mount Hood, which is rough land, or go up toward the river, the Columbia River, and either float down the river or go down along the sandy bank. So this one talks about the fork in the road also. Immigrants crossing the Columbia Plateau could see Mount Hood and the Cascade Mountains towering before them. They knew they were getting close. On the west side of the John Day River, they were offered a choice. Once they crossed the river, they had a choice to make. Continue going west through the Barlow Pass and over the Cascade Mountains, or go north to the Dales and down the Columbia River. And this one's sad. Look at the people in the water. Before the network of dams that today controlled the Columbia River, it was a raging torrent. One trip through the rapids was worth a month of ordinary life if you lived through it. Unfortunately for the Applegates and others, death was indeed lurking among the river's infamous rocks and whirlpools. This is kind of sad. Presently, there was a wail of anguish, a shriek, and a scene of confusion in our boat that no language can describe. The boat we were watching disappeared, and we saw the men and boys struggling in the water. Father and Uncle Jesse, seeing their children drowning, were seized with frenzy, and dropping their oars, sprang up from their seats and were about to leap from the boat to make a desperate attempt to swim to them, when Mother and Aunt Cynthia, in voices that were distinctly heard above the roar of the rushing waters, by commands and entreaties, brought them to a realization of their own perilous situation and the madness of an attempt to reach the other side of the river by swimming. Jesse A. Applegate, 1843. Wow, you're almost to your destination. Probably a couple of days until you're there. Been all across the country, and then you watch your kids drown in the river. Whew. This one talks about some crazy canoes, a Chinook canoe. They hired a Chinook canoe 35 feet in length and about 4 feet wide and floated down the river. Some of them are a great deal longer than this and 8 feet wide. The canoes are neatly made. The large one is one good year's work for a Chinook Indian. Jacob Hammer, October 27, 1844. And you could also rent a canoe from the Hudson's Bay Company. And they were very light yet strong. They were open about 40 feet long, 5 feet wide, and 3 feet deep, made of light, tough materials and clinker built. Well, I finally got some sun. It's been dark, dreary, cold all morning. So occasionally I like to stay at a small independent motel just for the fun of it. And this one's Denty's Motel in Biggs Junction, Oregon. It was actually pretty good. The inside screams 1960s, but it was clean, nothing wrong with it. Good morning, Silvia. Today is day 11 of our adventure, and we reached the end of the trail today. I'm currently in Denty's Motel in Biggs Junction, Oregon. It's about 50 degrees, and we're going to meander down the Columbia River and go around Mount Hood. So probably see some snow today. So let's get on the road. The wind is very calm this morning compared to yesterday. And this may be the last Oregon Trail kiosk that I visit, but there's a couple of points that it makes that I want to share with you. One is that the Indians here were friendly, and the immigrants and the Indians got along well. The biggest thing is crossing the rivers. They would hire Indians to assist them during the crossing. And here was a case where there was a ferry, but it was going to cost $15 for the ferry, and they hired a local Indian, and the Indian swam or rowed in front of each wagon to help them across, and they paid him $2, therefore saved $13. And this one here is interesting. Oregon Trail immigrants reached the Columbia River after an arduous trek across the dusty Columbia Plateau. They were exhausted. Their animals were exhausted, and everyone was to the point of collapse. Some immigrants reached this site and were forced to lighten their loads before crossing the river. And here's a quote from Esther Lockhart, 1851, but talking about they had to get rid of everything they could possibly spare. One wagon was shaved and whittled down as much as was consistent with strength and safety. All of our belongings were put in this one, and the other perfectly good wagon left standing beside the road. They had to part with their cheery little sheet iron cook stove that had been a real joy and comfort all across the plains. So here's Harriet, August 24th, 1864. Oregon Trail immigrants traveling across the Columbia Plateau caught their first view of long looked for Columbia at the crest of a hill near Biggs, where I just stayed in a motel. With Mount Hood towering majestically to the southwest and the Columbia River below, the day was fast approaching when immigrants would part company to become settlers. Relief near journey's end was surely offset by melancholy. This morning our party is separated after months of toil and hardships, dangers and difficulties. Freely helping to bear each other's burden begets a friendship not easily severed. All of the wagons go over the mountains except our own. We start alone toward the Dales. And my journey ends today. I think the last couple of spots I'm going to visit will be around Mount Hood. So I'm taking that route to the end of the trail. It's snowing. It's about 37 degrees. I stopped a little while ago and put on better gloves. I met two snow plows going the other way. I checked Google Maps before coming here because usually it will let me know if a road is closed, and it indicated I could get through here, but it's snowing. So let's see what happens. I keep checking the air temperature, and it had been 37. It just now dropped to 36. I'm not concerned about the cold. I've got a lot more gear that I can put on. I can handle cold down to 20 or lower, but I can't handle ice. So I got to keep checking the temperature. But right now we're still okay. Yeah, 36. Looks pretty. Oh, 34 degrees. If we go much higher, this might get interesting. Trees are gorgeous. Well, I was going to go down that road right there to look for a grave that was discovered in 1924 while constructing the old Mount Hood Loop Highway. There's an interpretive exhibit telling the story, boulder with a plaque. This person was only 50 miles away from the Willamette Valley, traveled all across the country, got within 50 miles, and died right here for some reason. Not going over there today. The grave was marked with an old wooden wagon tongue buried beneath decades of overgrown brush. When they dug up the site, they found the remains of an immigrant woman. After reburial, a cross was placed in honor of this unnamed pioneer. Here's a quote from the son of Stephen Coleman, former Barlow Toll Road superintendent, recalls, and the quote goes, "My father remembered meeting a man who had just buried his wife. He buried her in a wagon box made of the wagon and made a crude fence around the grave. She had been very sick, and they had camped there several days before she died. The man had 2 small children, a boy and a girl, both under 5 years of age." Almost made it. Let's go down the road and see what happens. The snow stopped. Now I just have rain. (3,506 miles to get here. I made it. Now I know there are multiple places where the trail actually ended. Not everyone came to Oregon City, end of the trail, but this is the classic end of the trail, or this is where the National Park Service says the trail ended, or a good place to put a museum. I don't know, but I made it to the end.